Welcome back to our series of webinars on mindsets, and this is the second of two webinars on the mindset of the parent for colleagues at NABS. So you may have spent 10 minutes since the last webinar, you may have spent a day or two since the last webinar, but nevertheless you've had an opportunity to start thinking about and start reflecting on your mindset. Let's have a little reminder of the things that we're looking to achieve from these two webinars. As you remember, the last webinar was all about understanding the basics of mindset and to start to see how it applies to you, to start to understand as adults. Now we can push on to the second half of this and see how this applies to us as parents, and to start to see what is the connection between our mindset and that of our children. So in the last half hour, half day, day or two that you've had since you watched the last video, what have you noticed? What thoughts have come up? What have you started to be aware of about your own mindset? And have you had the opportunity to see that you might have a positive impact from having this mindset? It might have given you plenty of opportunities, plenty of ways to grow and develop. Or you might have noticed that less so. And have you started picking up some of the mindsets of people around you? Do you start hearing people being really positive, up for it, prepared to challenge themselves, or people who are quite resistant, I can't do that, I can't do that, it's not possible? Just notice, and you will notice over the days and months and years that you'll start to tune into your own and other people's mindsets. So let's explore now, and let's put our parent hat on. As with the other webinar, there are a couple of activities to do for which you'll need pen and paper. And the first one is coming up now. So here's a scenario to reflect on. And in this scenario, you can read and see that your child has received some negative or critical feedback, or has failed in something. They haven't done as well as they and you would have liked them to have done. And we've all, I'm sure, been faced with this situation, and it's possibly a situation we dread, and we think, well, how do we deal with it? What are we going to say? So here on the next slide are a range of 6 options, 6 possible responses that you might give. Have a look at all 6 of them, and then put me on pause and decide which you would have done. So rank it from 1 to 6. The one that you'd absolutely do as your default, down to the 6 that you think are much less likely to do that. Put me on pause now, do a bit of work on those. So how did you get on? How did you find your numbering? Did you surprise yourself, or do you know yourself really well and know absolutely what you would have done? So these questions don't come from nowhere. These come from some research from Carol Dweck, about whom I was talking last time, who has designed this mindset theory. And she has carried out this study with thousands of parents. And the evidence show that some of the responses that we give here are more likely to provoke a fixed mindset in our child, and some are more likely to provoke a growth mindset in our child. All of them are probably, if put over well, are probably kind and helpful responses in our intention, but they might not have the right impact. And pretty well, let's look at the next slide. Pretty well it runs from fixed down to growth. So if we look at the first couple, that idea, particularly the second one, I've heard myself say that a lot. I want to comfort my child. I don't want them to feel bad. I don't want them to feel awkward. I want them to know actually it's not terrible. And of course we can't be brilliant at everything. But actually what we're sending there is quite a fixed message. We're saying that the level you're showing now means you probably can't push on beyond that level. Whereas if we look at the last two, the fifth one, what they've learned, we're encouraging them to reflect, encouraging them to note, encourage them to do what we call in education, be metacognitive, understand something about themselves as learners. And the bottom one, if we put it over in the right way, shows we're saying this is an opportunity to use education in the way that it should be used, which is identifying what we need to learn, where we currently are, and picking up the gap. So we're treating this result as information rather than as devastation. Reflect on that and see what happens next time. See what happens next time your child turns up with something, some type of critical feedback, some type of they scored below the level they and you would have liked them to have scored, and see how you choose to respond at that time. What we're going to see today is that what we do and what we say and how we support our children has a great deal to do with their mindset, and our mindset is likely to stimulate theirs. It doesn't mean they're going to be a carbon copy of us, but also nor does it mean that it's only what we do that influences their mindset. It's not just down to us. They are exposed to external stimulus like the television, like the internet, like friends. We also have other family members who, however much we want to tell them exactly what to say, may say things that are not so helpful. Well, they may say things that are incredibly helpful, probably most likely a mix of each. And of course, that place where they spend lots and lots of time, obviously now not at the moment during the corona crisis, but they spend a lot of time in school, and what teachers and schools do may absolutely help them have a growth mindset and may not. There's been a lot of good work done in the last 10-15 years with lots of books like this where teachers encourage students to have a strong growth mindset, but it's not universal. So we know there's a lot of stuff out there being done, but also we are clear that we have our role to play. You remember from the last webinar we talked about this nature times nurture and the opportunities. Well, we have to see ourselves as the guardians of our children's mindset, I think, and we have to do the best we can to be able to help our children develop and create a strong, powerful growth mindset, so that if they get negative messages from those groups over there, school, family members, TV, that actually what we've given to them is strong enough to protect them. So let's look at some of the messages we may give them, and let's look at some of the messages that other people may give them. I divide that up into fixed and growth as ever. So firstly, we can do things that might reinforce a fixed mindset. So by well-meaning, but by error, we might encourage our children to see a limit to their potential. So we may send this "you can't do it" messages, kindly take over for them when they're struggling, whether it's with chopping a vegetable or tying a shoelace. We may take over. We may impose on them a view that we already have of ourselves. Oh yeah, well we're not very good at ... so therefore don't expect you to be good at it because we're not good at it. That's not helpful. We might use our praise to boost their confidence, their self-esteem, but we also might over-egg in the same way as the judges in Strictly Come Dancing, may encourage people to believe that actually we only value them if they do something really, really well rather than just make an effort. And so we have to be very mindful of the way that we praise our children. We spend a lot of time on that in some of the other detailed workshops about mindset and language. And we might get this balance wrong about how much independence do they need. Do we give them too much too soon so that they are overwhelmed and a bit lost? Do we give them too little and lock them down so that they don't grow and they don't stretch? There is no magic formula here. I've looked for it. It's what's right for each family, but it is being mindful and knowing what type of level of independence our child needs to help them grow and flourish. And then finally, although we are in the modern era, we still have a lot of stereotyping. Do we criticize our daughters much more if they are, for example, violent as opposed to our sons? Do we criticize our sons less if they aren't neat and tidy like our daughters? Lots of research says that even modern enlightened parents, as I hope we all are, we still fall into that trap. So we can send some messages back here that may reinforce a fixed mindset. We need to be aware of that. But what about on the other side? What about enabling their growth mindset? Because that's really what we're looking to do, isn't it, here? So some things that I've seen parents do and do wonderfully well. Absolutely, giving them the chance. Giving them a chance to push themselves, not limiting, letting them challenge themselves, obviously within the bounds of safety. This very hard thing for us to do as parents, to be able to notice that struggle, that awkwardness, that tension of trying to get something right. If they're not suffering, we can step back for a little bit and let them have the pride of solving the problem. It's a great moment when it happens. It is difficult. I really acknowledge that. This thing about picking up if they have made a great deal of effort. Strangely enough, one of my growth mindset heroes is Homer Simpson. He said this thing. He said to his wife, "You must hate me for always failing." And Marge said, "No, I love you for always trying." And that's a wonderful example of we can notice when people make an effort, when our children really try hard. When they say they can't do it, let's hear that as they can't do it yet. Either they haven't learned it, or they haven't learned the system, or they don't have the belief that they can do it. So if they say they can't do it, say, okay, you can't do it yet. What do we need to do? What help do you need to be able to do it? This sends all this strong message. It says, I absolutely believe in you. I believe that you can grow, you can develop, you can flourish. The thing that you find really difficult is the thing that you can turn into some sort of triumph. And then suddenly we're getting back to the P word that we've talked about. Seeing that they have got a lot of potential. We're not capping it. We're not interested in capping it. We're letting them see where they can take themselves. So, fixed mindset reinforcers, growth mindset enablers. Let's pull those two lists back up again, and then you can put me on pause and give yourself a little test. Give yourself ticks and crosses where you are doing some of the fixings that you need to stop, where you're doing some of the growth things that you are doing. Celebrate those. Give yourself a minute or two, put me on pause, give yourself a bit of a self-score. So how did you get on? Did you notice actually that you are doing some of these strong growth mindset behaviors? If so, pat yourself on the back. Give yourself the opportunity to notice that. If you are doing some of these fixed mindset reinforcers, notice that maybe some of them can be changed quickly. Some of them might take a bit more time. Some of them might be a big attitude change. Some of them might need discussion with your partner. We might need to be able to generate some new and different thinking. And some of them may not go ever. I find when I work with teachers in schools, their biggest challenge is to move from unhelpful praising to helpful praising, because it is a different approach. Nevertheless, there's some real value to it. But whatever you score yourself here, know that you can change. Know that there is always an opportunity to change and to grow. This all links here to potential. I've used the word potential 4 or 5 times on the 2 recordings. The reason is because potential is a word that isn't used very well. In schools, they're busy putting it on their websites, on their brochures. In adult life and in the learning environment and as parents, I hear this language of being able to define a potential, saying we can see someone's potential and then therefore we can then do something about it, and that limits it. And our belief in the mindset world is very much that potential is unknown, it is unknowable. If we start deciding how much potential someone has got, we are not serving them. We are absolutely doing this thing. We are limiting their potential. We're saying you're an 8, you're a 2. If you talk to anyone in the next generation from us who maybe grew up before the 60s, they will tell you about the school systems, the grammar versus the secondary modern, where they were told you are this ability, that's what you get. You are that ability, that's what you get. And you see this sort of language being used. You see, talking about maximising, fulfilling and achieving their potential. That implies that their potential is at this point. There's a fixed spot, and that's not helpful. So let me share a few examples of people who know how to develop other people's potential. Benjamin Zander, he's a conductor, Boston Philharmonic Orchestra. He's a teacher, and what he does is on September the 1st, with his new batch of students, he gives every student an A. And then he asks this question, how are you going to get your A? So he sends this message, you are going to get an A. I trust that you'll be able to do it. I'm here to support you, I'm here to help you, but an A is absolutely within your gift. That's a very powerful message, and one that I'm sure I wish I'd heard when I was younger. Sugata Mitra. He's an educator who in 1999 put a laptop in the wall, like an ATM, of a slum in Calcutta. And he watched children come up to this machine, children who didn't have homes, who didn't go to school, and they taught themselves. They taught themselves to learn without a teacher, just with some technology. And this has been replicated thousands of times. He's now Professor of Information Technology at Newcastle University. He absolutely believes in the teacherless classroom, which is quite handy for the moment, and he can see ways that people can tap into their unlimited potential. And now, not an individual, but I think a collective. Anyone who is a Paralympic athlete or even a disability athlete of any sort, they believe in the potential beyond what they can imagine from their bodies. You can imagine that athletes who have mild or very significant disabilities would have been told hundreds and thousands of times that they should stop, they should give up. They might have some really nurturing people, their parents, but they might have other people who've said, oh, okay, right, you've reached your limit now, you know, you can't do this thing, you can't run that thing. They believe in their own unlimited potential, and I don't know about you, but when I see people in this environment, I find it incredibly moving. So let's change the words. Let's stop saying about limited potential. Let's talk about developing and fostering and nurturing and encouraging our children's potential. It's a really important thing to do, and it's a really powerful message. And it's also a message here that we can take into this current situation where most of us have children at home rather than in school. So let's look at a few things that we can do here. Think about what we've got. We've got children studying at home, us meant to be helping, and also some of us trying to get on with doing our jobs. So we see some of these fixed messages that come up here. And you can see these fixed messages are all about our lack of possibly belief that we can do it, that we can be their surrogate teacher. And also, can they be good independent learners? We also probably worry here that if we don't fulfill our work and carry on and lock ourselves in the back bedroom and do everything, then we're going to have problems at work. But also there's an opportunity. There's also an opportunity here to be able to grow and develop and use this in a strong way. And I've heard lots of parents in these last month or so saying things like this. I can really pick up when they're learning well on their own independently. It's powerful, and I'm loving being a part of it. So I can have a different role. I don't have to pretend to be a teacher, but I can be the person who listens, who coaches, who asks questions, who stands back, who facilitates their learning. Whether it is by bringing them a cup of tea, whether it is by letting them explain some working, whether it is just by a hand on the shoulder, I can be that person. I can support that. That we can share, we can listen, we can ask, and we can avoid that whole what did you do at school thing today when they say nothing. We can help them talk about their learning experiences because they are much closer to us than normally when they're off at school from 8 till 4. And then finally, look at all the resources out there that are available. Goodness me, you want to watch theatre and opera and learn a language for free and study A-levels? Goodness me, it's overwhelming. In a way, I wish I didn't have a job so we could just do all the learning at this point in time. And then finally, clearly, we need to find something, don't we? We need to find a way of being able to work efficiently, whether it means, as some parents are doing, you take the morning shift, I take the afternoon shift, whether it is pushing it all into one day, whether it is only working early in the morning or late at night. All sorts of creativity is needed, whether it is renegotiating with work. I'm sure at work mostly are very understanding about this, and certainly from people I've spoken to within NABS, we've heard some really positive, strong things. So our fixed and growth mindset will be under the spotlight, particularly at this time, because we are under duress, because it is not an easy time. But some of these things here are ideas. Let's bring this towards the end. There's a few more things just to make this feel and finish and feel complete. Firstly, let them have the lead. Let them develop. So if they are saying that I can't do it, I'm rubbish, I'm useless, let's not rescue them. Let's not challenge that. But let's just notice how much some of our children might have a fixed mindset and where that might start to change. When there's an opportunity, when they can start stretching themselves, when they have a go, whether it's by us creating it or them taking it on, it doesn't have to involve tractors, that just helps. See if they can take these things on, see if they can start learning and noticing. And our job is to facilitate and to observe and comment, and that's all. And this really powerful thing, I've heard stories from many parents who were in the I can't do it category about something, and they've let their child teach them. They've let their child teach them something, whether it is drawing, doing roly-polies in the garden, standing on their head, whatever it is, let them teach you. There's some real power in that. They know they have helped you transform your mindset. And as I said in the last video, take on a challenge yourself. It's such wonderful modeling. The slide shows different ways that I've seen adults do this. From left to right, a head teacher learning the guitar and playing it in assembly every week. Adults going back to study. A mum that I know has gone to do GCSE maths last year. Her daughter is so proud of her. Another mum I know is learning to swim as an adult. Goodness me, that's challenging. I've seen also adults learning Spanish in classes with their own children. If we can be this sort of role model and say, okay, I'm going to have a go at learning something that I find incredibly difficult to do, maybe start slowly, something that I find quite difficult to do, then we've got an opportunity to grow and change and develop. And then we model it for our children, and there's some real strength, there's some real messages in there. So we've had a whistle-stop tour, 40 minutes worth of consideration about our own mindset. It may have really stimulated you, and you may feel complete and ready to now go and work on it in depth. You may have a load of questions to be responded to. We will make another 20-minute recording to answer all of your questions. So please send your questions to this email address. Send them by Monday, please. So if you send them by Monday, the 27th of April, then we will be able to make a recording and send that out next week so that your questions can be answered. Of course, there's lots of online resources. Carol Dweck has done TED Talks. There's all sorts of stuff out there, but we can help you firsthand. So let's do that. Here's a bit of reading. We will send you a PDF of these slides so you can get the reading list. There are some very good books. These are all books that talk about mindset in one way or another, but they have a growth mindset approach to parenting, and that's really important. So as we come to the end, have a thought. Have a thought about what you're going to do. What effort are you going to make with what you've learned in order to be able to develop, create, and embed a good, strong mindset with you and with your children. What will you do this week, this month, or this year? Take on some new challenges. Mostly get to understand your own mindset so that you can have the strongest possible mindset, and so that you can then support your children so that they have a strong and powerful mindset. Mostly enjoy the learning, enjoy the change, enjoy the development, and watch yourselves and your children flourish even more. Good luck with it all.